Hey guys, Muncheez here, welcome to another ZZZ video, and in this video I'm going to be going over the Withering Garden, which is the level 45 Hollow Zero that you can do with a whole bunch of handicaps, and if you plan on doing it with all 11 of them, I will go over some tips that will probably help you with your run. Before we get into it, I do want to have some disclaimers on here. This video is a lot longer than my normal videos. There's a lot of things to take into account when you're doing this at level 45 on extreme difficulty with all 11 handicaps. You do have the option of coming back to this later when you're at a higher level. I recommend this if you do want to kind of avoid some of the headache. And it is an absolute pain to get back to the last boss, so when I have time to get back to her, I'll probably make a video specifically for the last boss of this place because it is a pretty dangerous place to be in, and even getting to the last boss is a huge challenge. But most of the tips I'll go over will be specifically for helping you get to that last boss. So I'm going to go over some of the handicaps to just kind of always keep in mind as you're going through this if you're running this for the extreme difficulty, which is all 11 of them. And the important ones to keep in mind is if you get hit, you lose energy in decibels. You'll take more damage, 50% more, if you have less than 1500 gear coins, as well as you're going to get these chance encounter TV screens, which are literally the worst. There's no way, and it even says it's unavoidable. So be very careful with this. It can actually just break your run. And you might just get very unlucky, so keep that in mind. Bosses will recover stun quicker, and anything good like reducing pressure reduction and HP recovery stuff is reduced, as well as items in the store are more expensive, and every time you get on a new floor, you'll gain 50 pressure. These handicaps, in my opinion, are the worst ones and the ones that you always have to constantly take into account while going through the hollow. So the first thing I want to go over are the research Resoniums. So you'll always get prompted with these, and the one I highly recommend is the one that is based off of HP missing, because the other two are based off of pressure and the amount of gear coins spent. However, there is a handicap where you take more damage and whatnot. You're at a disadvantage if you have less than, I believe, 1500 gear coins. So you don't want to spend all your gear coins, and it kind of hinders this one. But for the most part, the one that scales with missing HP, this scales well with the encounter that you get at the beginning because it automatically gives you 20%. Now, as far as the specialty Resoniums, go for either critical or whatever elements of team that you are using. You just want as much damage as you can get. And the shield Resoniums are also very highly valued in here. I'm going to be going over a lot of things, but the first thing I want to go over is the chance encounter, and this is a huge deal in here. It's actually one of the things that make it very difficult. I highly recommend picking the gear coins because as far as pressure and the health goes, there are things amongst the stage that will help you counteract these two mechanics. Now, it's going to ask you to pick a negative one at the start. I highly recommend the 80% HP because when you're missing that 20% HP, you gain damage from that initial research Resonium that you picked, which is the every percent health that you're missing, you gain that damage. So as you can see here, each agent in the squad deals 20% increased damage. It says 0 and 0 afterwards because you only have one squad member at the start. But since you picked that handicap, you now have 20% increased damage right off the bat. Now, if you haven't already learned how some of these hollows work, when you move in a direction, the opposite side of you will it'll give way. So like if I were to move like in here, I moved up, the last row on the bottom is going to go away. Now, when you're planning these routes, you want to make a route for yourself that gives you as much benefit as possible with taking as little pressure as you can going through this, because every bad thing at this point, if you're running all the handicaps, is increased and every good thing is decreased. So things like HP and pressure reduction, those things that you use are decreased, and bad things that mess you up and give you corruptions and stuff like that, those things are increased. Now, Artifice Resoniums. If you can get one of these at the start, I highly recommend getting one of these and activating it. And either the crit damage increase afterwards or the pressure decrease as well as the energy regen. All of these are very good to get. So I picked the energy regen first because having increased energy regen is huge in here. You want as much damage as you can because a lot of these stages take very long to do. Now, the shield Resoniums. If you can get your hands on something that shields your character, I highly recommend getting it, whether it's like performing a perfect dodge or just dazing an enemy or doing whatever, giving your characters a shield. This is very, very highly valued, in my opinion, because you will be running this place on low HP. I'm not saying try to get as low as possible, but if the lower you are, as I said earlier, that Resonium that gives you the bonus damage is very useful. So if you have a shield on your character at most times, if you get hit for any reason, you will not die. And you still get the full damage bonus from that Resonium. Now, as a disclaimer about the HP thing, this is the strategy that worked for me clearing this with 11 handicaps. So this is just something that I came up with just to help other people because this was actually very difficult for me to do. I spent a lot of hours in here and this is what worked best for me. So managing your HP and keeping a shield on them is highly favorable. Now, in the beginning, after you pick up an Artifice Resonium, you're going to want to go through a fight stage, whether it's like a time trial thing or a just regular boss fight. I just highly recommend getting your Artifice Resoniums active as soon as possible so you don't have the defect while you are fighting a boss. So I made a path for myself where I did 2 combats and I activated my very first Artifice Resonium. So now I have increased energy and decibel gain. And then if you are going through these floors, you also want to take into account if you see anything where enemies are stunned for longer, pick this up because there is a handicap that makes it so enemies are stunned for not that long. So you want to increase that stun timing, as well as picking up more Artifice Resoniums. And as you can see here, the Public Security Reserve Force has an option to lose HP and obtain an Artifice Resonium. You gain damage for picking this up, as well as another Artifice Resonium that you can activate. And just to remind you guys, if you pick the HP missing, that is why you gain damage from losing that 10% health. Now, as far as the shop goes on these first floor, I highly recommend spending as many gear coins as you can on the first floor, and I will get into that later. Without sounding too contradictory to the gear coin handicap, I kind of want to make a point later on as to why you're going to want to do this. So spend all your gear coins on the first floor so you can get as much bonuses as you can from this first floor, because this is the easiest one to get through. Now, these fights, for the boss fights for the floors, they're not anything to scoff at least early on, before we are high enough internet level to have max level characters. So if you're doing this early on, as soon as you get it, these fights can be reset. So if one of your characters that you really need dies, or if you do really poorly and you just want to clear it, you can restart the stages. So you can restart, not the whole stage, but the fight. So if you mess up the fight, you can restart the fight. Now, once you've finished the first floor, gotten whatever power-ups you needed, and suffered immensely, these fateful reunions is the next thing I want to talk about. So the way these work is every time you pick one of these choices, the next time you run into it, which you will have one less choice. So it gives you one good choice and one bad choice, and if there's a no thanks option, I highly recommend doing the no thanks option if you don't need anything good. Now, this is where spending all your gear coins on that first floor come into play, because it's going to have an option where you have a 33% chance to lose all your gear coins. When you pick this option is eliminated, and if you do lose all your gear coins, you only lose a little bit. And if you might get lucky and you might not lose anything, but that is the reason why you want to spend all of your gear coins early on, so that later on you can easily maintain that 1500 gear coin threshold as to take less damage from the bosses. So for those of you who are kind of familiar with roguelike games, this interim floor there's like a min-maxy way to kind of do it. So you kind of want to be able to do things like restore your HP by picking up a other member and going into the bank. So this is just an example of one thing that you can do. So as you can see here, I'll pick up Nicole probably, and I'll head over to the bank, and what you can do is it shares your health, so it'll equalize the health. As you can see, I restored the health of Ellen and Lycan from doing that. And you kind of want to take all the damage and things like that, or spend the health or what have you, like do all the negative HP stuff before you go and restore your health. Now, if you can't manage to get the S rank for the prior floor, it does kind of kick you in the butt a little bit because you don't have access to the bonus stuff. But the bank zero allows you to restore health and do a little bit of, it kind of helps you out a little bit before you head on to the next floor. And as you can see, everyone in my team is like a little bit less than half health. This is why I highly recommended getting the shield Resoniums as you're going through here. That'll benefit you. So where if you go into a fight or something like that, and these fights get a lot longer and the monsters get a lot tankier. So the chances of you taking damage are much higher because you're spending a longer time in these fights. And as you can see here, if you can get the team that you want early on, it is actually very beneficial. There will be times when you're going through this, you get bad RNG and you might not be able to pick up the team that you want. Now, from here on out, you have to be very mindful of the terrain because there are things that lock you into a specific path once you take the very first step. So if you have any Artifice Resoniums or things of that sort that you still want to activate from combat, make sure you set yourself on a path to where you're going to fight something to activate that Artifice Resonium. You do not want to have the negative effects of these Artifice Resoniums as you are entering into like the later stages of the Hollow Zero. Also, take note of your Bangbu plugins while you're going through this. I think there's some beneficial ones on the mod board that you get, but for the most part, if you're in a bad spot and you don't want to fight or something like that, you can use like a bomb, for example. You will take damage, but it's better than sitting in a very long fight if you do not have to. But do keep an eye out on your Bangbu plugins, so you can restore health, get gear coins, reduce pressure, things of that nature from the Bangbu plugins. Now, this is an example of where I should have picked the no thanks option because this is the last floor and I got kind of greedy, so I picked up the 2 Resonia. And what ends up happening is sometimes you'll only be prompted with one option and there's no way out of it. So this time I should have picked no thanks, but instead I got prompted with either taking 2 corruptions or just gutting my HP from one of the characters. So this is definitely a situational thing just to be aware of while you're going through here. And just to reiterate once again, these fateful encounter things are the things that make the run very difficult. So once again, I stress, make sure you use this no thanks option because if you just pick everything through and try to RNG gamble it, you might end up with a really bad situation that scuffs your run. So whether it be in the beginning or the second floor or third floor, make sure you pick it at the appropriate timing. And after I had made this mistake of not picking it at all in this run that I am doing, I do highly recommend keeping the no thanks option for the later floors of the Hollow Zero. But if a situation occurs to where it's better to pick it up early on, say you're in a really bad spot and you don't want to hinder yourself more and try to recover in between the stages, that's like an example of somewhere where you would pick the no thanks option earlier on. Another small thing to note is there are tiles that can help a lot with corruptions. So RNG is a very, very heavy factor into clearing this. There are these, what are they called? Activated crystals. There's an option that actually takes off all the corruption you have, but it gives you 1 in return. So if you have a whole bunch of them, you can clear all of them and then you'll get only 1 in return. So it is a great way to manage your corruption. Now, I'm going to go list some things because there's just way too much footage of the boss fights because they're way too long and I can't possibly fit them all into this video. The most important thing is just know that the floor bosses do take a long time to do. If you're doing this at level when you're getting it, they will sometimes prevent you from getting the S rank for that floor. They can be more difficult than the last boss. And some of these setups might not even be worth trying it because your team composition isn't made for it. One example for me is when I was doing this with Ellen and like in Sokaku, the double robots are extremely horrible to deal with, and it is very, very difficult to deal with that team on that boss fight. So if you have like a Electro team or something, like if you're maining Grace and you have like a really well-built Grace and an Anomaly team, that makes it very easy to deal with because the shocks will CC them and you can have a little bit more control. And as far as the last boss goes, she has, if you're not familiar with Nineveh, she has like this giant spinning attack where she continuously spins. I highly recommend saving that counter for that spinning attack only, and you can just perfect dodge everything else, and you'll be a-okay. The fight just takes a really long time. You just have to stay focused. And when there's wasp ads, you can go ahead and kill them as soon as you want, or you can just leave them up. There is a way to bug them, and I wish I was able to do it, but I couldn't do it, and it's a pain in the ass just to even get to that boss on this difficulty. And if you're deciding to go kill the wasp ads, just make sure you're watching out for lasers, because she's going to do the finger lasers when you are trying to kill the ads, because they purposely fly away so that you turn your back to the boss so she can fire lasers at you. Now, this place is very heavy on the RNG factor, so there are some situations that I didn't even go over because I could spend probably an hour going through every situation that you can run into. But if you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, or anything like that, I'd be more than happy to help you guys out. Don't forget to like and sub on the way out, and that's it for this video. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.